and the theoretical models wherein we try to give a verdict on whether dividend decisions are relevant to the overall valuation of the firm or not. So, like any school of thought or any theoretical foundation, here also we have two contrasting views. One school of thought says that okay, dividends are relevant depending on whether the firm is in a growth stage or a declining stage. We should decide on the dividend policy because then that impacts the valuation of the firm in the market, in the sense that this has a direct impact on the market price of the share. Under the dividend relevance model, we say that if the firm has investment opportunities before it is growing, then it is the best to save dividends for now and retain more and more. The thought becomes just the opposite when the firm is in a declining state. That is, it is not able to give a good return on the investment, and basically the return on investment is lower than the cost of capital. So there it is better to distribute the dividends rather than retaining them in the business. So this is what we covered in the Walter model. I'll quickly move through. So this is what I've already explained you, that you can have three types of firm: a growth firm, a normal firm, or a declining firm, depending on what is the relationship between R. R is the return on investment earned by the firm, and K, which is the overall cost of capital. So, and overall cost of capital means cost of equity, because one of the assumptions in this theory is that equity is the only source of financing for the firm. This is the formula, and in this regard, we had practiced one question in the last lecture on calculation of the price of the share. We'll take up another question from the Walter model. Let's have a look at the question. Now, in this question, you are given three firms: A Limited, B Limited, and C Limited. Their internal rate of return and cost of capital is given to you. Basically, the cost of capital is same for all the three firms at 10%. Then you have the earning per share. Now, using Walter model, you need to calculate the effect of dividend under three conditions mentioned in the question. One, when there is no dividend, 0% dividend policy. Second, when dividend is at 8 rupees per share. And third is when dividend is paid at 10 rupees per share. So, let's see how many cases do we have for each firm here, that is A Limited, and C Limited. Now for each of the firms, you have three cases each. So which is first, 0% dividend case. So 0 rupees means a 0% dividend payout ratio. This is basically the dividend payout ratio, rupees 0 or 0% DP ratio. In the second case, the question is asking you that the dividend is rupees 8, which means that the DP ratio is at 80%. And in the third case, the dividend will be 10 rupees. So the DP ratio is 100%. So you can start solving. There are three cases for each firm, which means you have 9 cases in total. I'm writing the formula here again. R is the internal rate of return. K is the cost of capital. E is the earning per share. D is the dividend per share. And entire term is upon KE. We'll start solving and then we'll discuss the answers. Okay, so let's start discussing the solutions. Madhav has already given the answers for A Limited. So rupees 150 is the market price of the share when DP ratio is 0%, 110 when it is 80%, and then it is 100 when it is 100%. Okay, let's move to B Limited. 100 for B Limited. Is this at the first ratio or throughout? Oh dear. This is throughout, and we move to the last part of C Limited. So how much the value is coming? Okay, 80 at 0%, then 96, and then 100. Okay, thank you. Now, in the last part of the question, you have been asked to explain the difference in valuation of the three companies. So, the best explanation here is that all the three firms are different from each other in the sense that A Limited has a return on investment greater than the cost of equity. B Limited has both the values same, and then C Limited has R less than KE. So A Limited is a growth firm, hence it is at 0% dividend payout ratio that the firm is giving the maximum, the price of the share is the maximum. Then B Limited is a normal firm, any dividend payout ratio, the value of the share remains the same, whereas C Limited is a declining firm, so the more you distribute, higher will be the value of the firm, which means it is at 100% dividend payout ratio that you get the highest price for the share. Okay. So I hope this is clear to everyone. We move to another question. Last question on the Gordon model. So a bit different. Please pay attention. Now you're given the number of equity shares outstanding, the earnings of the company, dividend paid, return on investment, and the PE ratio for the firm. So let's start solving the question. In the question, you have been asked that if the Walter model is used, are you satisfied with the current dividend policy of the firm? If not, what should be the optimal dividend payout ratio? So let's see the earning per share. 5 lakh is the total amount, 1 lakh is the number of equity shares. So EPS comes to 5. Similarly, the dividend per share comes to rupees 4. And very clearly can we see that the dividend payout ratio is 80%. 4 upon 5 into 100, that comes to 80%. This is the first information given in the question. Then you are given that R is equal to 12% and the PE ratio is 10 times. Now PE ratio is calculated as MPS upon EPS. It is always in number of times. So the how many times is the market price of the share as compared to the earning per share? That is what the PE ratio is telling to you. So this is 10. Now using both the informations, we can say PE ratio is equal to MPS upon EPS, means that value of 10 is equal to MPS upon 5 is equal to 10. Putting the values, you are getting the market price of the share as rupees 50. So this means that currently with the present dividend payout ratio, the market price of the share comes to rupees 50. Also, furthermore, to actually see whether this is the optimum dividend payout ratio, we need to apply the Walter model, and for that the formula, as you already know, is, now see what information are you having and what is the missing information. So in this formula, the missing information is the cost of equity. And class cost of equity is related to the PE ratio. Basically, cost of equity is the inverse of PE ratio. So now you can easily calculate the the cost of equity. Again, that comes out to be 10%. With this information, you see that the firm, let me just add a page here. What we see is that return on investment is greater than the cost of equity. So basically what you are having is a growth firm. Your return on investment is greater than the cost of equity. You have a growth firm in question. But for a growth firm, the ideal dividend payout ratio is 0%. And in our case, we are distributing 80% of dividend. So ideally, P0. Please calculate how much is P0 coming at 0% DP. So ideally, value of P0 at 0% DP should be, please calculate how much is the value coming to. At 0% dividend payout ratio, the price of the share comes to so this comes to rupees 60 per share. So the maximum price of the share can be achieved at 0% dividend payout ratio, which is verified through the information in the question also, that with 80% dividend payout ratio, you're actually having a market price which is lower than the optimal price as should be of the share. So the firm is not having a satisfactory dividend policy because given the nature of firm being a growth firm, it would have been ideal that the dividend payout ratio should have been 0% because there you would have been able to maximize the price of the share. Okay, so any doubt, any question you may ask. By that time, we proceed with the next model of the dividend relevance approach. Kind of missed that slide here. I will. So the next approach under the dividend relevance theory is the Gordon model. Now the Gordon model also agrees with the Walter model that there are three types of firms. Again, that is dependent on what return on investment those firms are earning and what is the cost of equity. Now, Gordon model has two additional assumptions. One, that the growth rate of the firm is the product of the retention ratio and the return on investment. Now, if the dividend payout ratio and retention ratio are put in an equation form, you get this equal to 1. So which means if the firm is distributing 80% dividend, then the firm is retaining 20% dividend. So B, the retention ratio is nothing but 1 minus the dividend payout ratio. And the product of the retention ratio and the internal return on investment gives you the growth rate for the firm. And second assumption under the Gordon model is KE is greater than G. Cost of equity is always greater than G. Now, what explanation does the Gordon model give? The Gordon model says that firms which are regularly distributing the dividends. Now, investors they trust such firms and they discount the future expected cash flows from this firm at a lower discount rate. तो कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी लो हो जाती है उन फर्म्स की जो रेगुलर डिविडेंड पे कर रहे हैं. Furthermore, investors prefer dividend today. They prefer regular dividend because that is certain and risk free. Waiting for capital gains means that there is a risk factor attached to it because that will happen in the near future, in the near or far future, that you will earn capital gains on the investment made. So, there the capital gains are discounted at a higher discount rate. So, for regular dividends, your discounting rate is lower, but for capital gains, the discount rate is higher because the investors believe that a bird in hand is better than two in bush. Which means जितने regular dividend आए उतना better है, उतना ज़्यादा certainty है as compared to capital gains. So then obviously if the cost of equity या जो डिस्काउंट रेट आप यूज कर रहे हो अगर वो कम होगा तो प्राइस ऑफ शेयर ज्यादा होगा एंड इफ कैपिटल गेन्स व्हिच आर द केस ऑफ ग्रोथ फर्म जो कम रिटेन कर रही है ज्यादा सॉरी जो ज्यादा रिटेन कर रही है कम डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर रही है ग्रोथ फर्म के लिए फर्स्ट केस एप्लीकेबल होगा सॉरी सेकंड केस एप्लीकेबल होगा कैपिटल गेन्स देना चाहिए ग्रोथ फर्म आपको रेगुलर डिविडेंड नहीं दे रही तो ऐसी फर्म के लिए अगर कॉस्ट ऑफ इक्विटी ज्यादा होता है दैट इज द डिस्काउंट रेट फॉर कैपिटल गेन्स taken by the investor is high then the resultant price of share will fall. So the investors they want regular dividends only when that happens they value the firm more and they discount this regular dividend stream at a lower discount rate. Accordingly, the price of the share as per the Gordon model is E into 1 minus B upon KE minus BR and this BR is nothing but the growth rate of the firm. So again, if cost of equity is higher than the return on equity or the cost of equity is higher than the return on investment, then this is the case of a declining firm, better to distribute dividends. If the return on investment is higher than the cost of equity, it is a growth firm, better to retain dividends. So तीन केसेस यहाँ पर भी बनते हैं योर फर्म कैन ईदर बी अ ग्रोथ फर्म अ नॉर्मल फर्म और अ डिक्लाइनिंग फर्म and depending on that your dividend policy should be created. So this is all about the theoretical explanation for the Gordon model. We will take up the questions in the next class.